Hey you guys, welcome to Ultimate Road Trips. Before we begin today's episode, I just wanted to let you know that we've been experimenting a lot with our format of presentation lately. Some of you may have liked what you've been seeing, and then there are those of you who don't. So having considered feedback from our videos so far, we're going back to how we did things a little while back. Less of me, more of what we do best, which of course is drive. With that said and out of the way, here is coming back to one of our road trips, one of those that we hold closest to our hearts. Get ready to experience what we did when we were on our way to Dhanushkodi from Chennai in Tamil Nadu. For those of you who are familiar with Chennai, we're starting off from Neelankarai, and you already know what I'm talking about. But for the majority of you who aren't actually familiar with the city, where we are now is actually almost the beginning of the East Coast Road which connects Chennai to Pondicherry. Let's not waste any more time and get right down into the route options. Dhanushkodi is 566 kilometers roughly and 10.5 hours from our starting point according to route option number 1. Route option number 2 is 541 kilometers and a little bit more than 10.5 hours from Chennai to Dhanushkodi. To sum it up, route options 1 and 2 are pretty much the same. The only difference being that if you were to go via route 2, you will take a slight detour from Cuddalore and connect back to NH32 a little ahead of Pattukottai. Route option number 3. Dhanushkodi is 615 kilometers and a little less than 10 hours and 20 minutes away. This route gets you to exit the ECR at Chengalpet and brings you on to NH38, on which you will pass through most of central Tamil Nadu and cross places like Villupuram, Perambur, Manapparai and Shivaganga before you hit Ramanathapuram, which finally connects to Rameshwaram. My real intent was to stick to route 1 and continue on the coastal road, but unknowingly, and as things would turn out, we ended up on route option number 3. Now that you know what to do when you want to go to Dhanushkodi from Chennai, it's time to look at what we did on our way there. Off to Rameshwaram and Dhanushkodi from Chennai. Yeah! We're doing this shit like we'd planned. As usual, we're late. And yeah, time to load up. As I'm touching your sweet love. As I'm touching your sweet love. Oh my god, the car is fucking hot, as you can see. Alright. Okay, time to get to business, folks. A lot of you have no idea of how hot Chennai can get during summers. It is 11 AM now in Chennai, but April heat makes it feel like 3 PM. The sun is already out and directly over our heads as I speak. You guessed it right, so the best thing and the only logical thing to do is get some ice cream. So our first pit stop was like 10 minutes after we actually left the house. First stop is Ibako. Okay. We stopped off for some ice cream at this place called Ibako. Just want to remind you guys that this is not a sponsored video. And also more importantly, the ice cream there is really good. Also, I wonder why they don't have an outlet in Bombay yet. Anyway, the foodie in me highly recommends you to try their toppings and get your ice cream just the way you like it. It's true, I think that the heat really does get to you after a point. As though gulping down all of that ice cream wasn't enough, we took our next pit stop in less than 30 minutes for some retail therapy.
Open the car!
It's fucking hot.
Stands we will have in Dhanushkodi. Chappals are not going in it.
What?
This is the kind of sand we will have at Dhanushkodi.
Yeah.
And my chappals are not going in it. That's why the new chappal was a good fit.
Okay. I'm normally the kind of person who walks out of a shop after picking up what I want in less than 30 minutes. But what surprised me was that for some strange reason, my wife did exactly the same thing this time around. So thankfully we were out of the shopping arcade and back on the road in less than half an hour. It was difficult to say whether we were blazing down the East Coast Road or whether it was the East Coast Road blazing down on us. That's how hot it was. Anyway, the drive down ECR was short-lived, and instead of continuing straight down ECR to Pondi, we branched off on towards the right, headed to Chengalpet. For those of you who've been following our videos by now, you know that we have a 36 ka akada with Google Maps. And though it was completely my fault for taking this right turn, I will still blame Google Maps for helping me pick a more efficient but less scenic route. So we've stopped off somewhere close to Chengalpet, which is around 100 kilometers from Chennai, and we have quite a long way to go, another 400 kilometers to cover at least. Yes, my wife has made me tie this onto my neck like a dog for some reason. In her opinion, I'm sweating a lot when I come out, so I shouldn't sweat and ruin this really cool t-shirt that I just got myself. Yeah, okay. Some kids there, local kids. Okay, my friends, time to go. See you soon. 'So now we've crossed Chengalpet and are crossing what used to be, I guess, the river Pallar. Note, the river has completely dried up now and looks like a desert. Blame the summers of global warming, or both, maybe.
Everything is changing. Something else like it was before. Everything is moving. Screaming out like I wanted some more.
5 minutes later, we stopped off at a fuel station in Manmadur to tank up.
ஃபுல் பண்ணிடுங்க, ஆட்டோ ஃபுல். ஆமாம், ஹாய் சொல்லுங்க.
என்ன வீடியோ எடுக்கிறீங்க?
ஆமாம், அப்படியே எடுத்துக்கிறேன்.
ஏன்
யூடியூப்ல போடுவேன்.
யூடியூப்லாம் போடாதீங்கண்ணா.
ஓகே, போட மாட்டேன். ஃபைன்.
ஏன் எடுக்கிறீங்க அது மாதிரி?
என்னோட சேனல் இருக்கு. நான் பாம்பேலேருந்து ஓட்டுன்னு வந்தேன் வண்டி.
யூடியூப் சேனலா?
ஆமாம்.
சேனல் பேர் சொல்லுங்க, நான் சர்ச் பண்ணுவேன்.
ஓகே.
I also tried my hand at speaking my mother tongue, and after that conversation with the gas station attendant, I guess it's safe for me to assume that I know just about enough Tamil to save my life or to get help when it's needed. Okay, Chennai folks, you can stop judging me. Also, my apologies to the gas station attendant. I'm doing exactly what he told me not to do, which is featuring him on this video. Can't see what Neelu is doing, but just to demonstrate her OCD, she's taken off my seat belt, which is here, and she's cleaning my clothes. She's almost like a chalta firta vacuum cleaner, dude. Oh, there seems to be a railway crossing. We've covered around 90 kilometers from Chennai and stopped off at a place called Madurantakatam for some original Kumbakonam filter coffee. This should have ideally been a 15-minute halt, but due to some unforeseen circumstances, also which had a lot to do with me spelling some of that divine filter coffee on my brand new t-shirt, there was a significant 30-minute delay. And you'll know why.
Of the car. Stop the fucking movie right now! Your water is drying up, but your stain is not going. Can you come here? Come close. Vijay, don't piss me off. Come close. You see this? Your stain is here. The water is drying up. The stain is not going to dry up.
It will.
So stand in the heat. काला कोका खड़ा रहे टैन और धूप में जब तक और मैं तुमको अभी क्या लिख कर दे रही हूँ. We will not venture to bloody Dhanushkodi till the time this fucking shirt is not washed and dried. You think I'm joking?
Okay. Yeah, we won't. See, the fuss is about this. I don't know whether you can see it, but
अगर ये शर्ट कल सुबह तक मुझको धो के साफ करके ड्राई क्लीन करके नहीं मिली, you can forget Dhanushkodi.
After having averted an event that comes second only in scale of destruction to a nuclear apocalypse, it was time to get back on the road. We've crossed our first toll after we exited ECR and are on the Chennai-Trichy highway, or better known as NH32. "40 minutes later and almost 130 kilometers later, we are now crossing our second toll and are still on NH32. We're passing through a place called Tindivanam, which should have ideally been crossed 3 hours back, but for reasons best known only to us, and you know, we're still here. After a quick pit stop and some more coffee at our beloved CCD, we can see the sun slowly setting on the horizon. After a solid 8 hours on the road, it is 6 in the evening by now, and we haven't even touched the halfway mark yet. With only a little over 190 of the 600 kilometers that we needed to do, and the fact that it's going to be dark sooner than we think it is, the easy option would have been to look for a place and call it a day. But the sunset, as always, and the spectacular road wasn't going to let that happen. We picked up pace and covered the next 60 kilometers in half an hour. Half an hour later, and after the sun had completely set, we were in for our next big challenge. Somewhere before the Perambur bypass road, and just a little over around 270 kilometers from where we started off, we ran into a flat tire. This is where my decision of having replaced air in our tires with nitrogen before leaving this trip made a very big difference. I'm assuming that if we were running on normal air, our tire might have burst and we would have been in a much worse off situation than we are in right now. So far on this trip, for some reason, it felt like we were spending more time taking pit stops than the time spent behind the wheel. But I guess now was a better time than ever to set the equation right and get back right into business. A little over 45 kilometers and half an hour later, we were on the Trichy Padalur Toll Plaza. we finally crossed the halfway point, having done a little over 315 kilometers. Despite all the pit stops and the flat tire, this was much before 8 pm. This now gave me enough confidence to do the remaining 300 odd kilometers, and there was absolutely no looking back. Minutes later, we were crossing the Kolidam River on NH38 and entering Thiruvankoil. Though it was dark and we could barely see the water, it was a really good feeling to be crossing a river, especially one that hadn't dried out yet. A little over 2 hours from Thiruvankoil, we're still on NH38, which by now had transformed into a much narrower 2-lane highway. It was difficult to keep track of exactly where we were because I was majorly focused on the road. It was a really big relief to see that we were only now 125 kilometers away from Rameshwaram. To begin with, it was almost 11 in the night now, and for some reason, one side of the highway was shut. To add to that, we got a little bit of a spooky vibe on this part of the road, and for some time both of us just kept shut. At that point in time, none of us said anything to each other, but later on, and once we had reached our hotel in Dhanushkodi, Rameshwaram, I distinctly remember the feeling that something or someone was running alongside our car. Anyway, we were around 30 kilometers from Ramananthapuram, and the signboard read 109 kilometers to Dhanushkodi from this point. That was a relief. Around 50 kilometers and half an hour later, we finally entered the outskirts of Rameshwaram. Apart from passing a few people on the toll booths and cars that did not exceed the number of fingers on one fist, there was absolutely nothing but us and that road and the darkness of the night. It did not matter what we were thinking or what we were talking about, or whether what we were even talking about made remotely any sense. But what we knew is that we had to keep talking to each other so that I could focus on the road and not on the things that could spook us out any further than we already were. Up until this moment in time, while I pen this down, I haven't the faintest idea that we were crossing the Pamban bridge exactly in the middle of the night. I may have thought that it was a little before or maybe even after midnight, But now that I see the timestamp on the video, we were crossing this 2.5 kilometer long Pamban bridge exactly at 12 am. Don't let the length of this bridge fool you. It is very much in a cyclone prone, high wind velocity zone, and especially when it's your car and only one other car on that bridge at this hour, presence of mind is of the essence. It may not have taken us more than 3 or 4 minutes to cover this distance, but the both of us will remember every second that we spent crossing this bridge that night. We reached our destination, the Hyatt Place in Rameshwaram, in less than 10 minutes after crossing the Pamban Bridge. What a relief.
Just like that, it's time to get out of this beautiful place.
Fishes.
Where do you see fishes? Okay,